Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to take this time that I have right now to kind of explain a situation. The other day, I talked about basically the whole situation with, if I can find it here on YouTube. I basically talked about the situation involving Countdown to Chaos and the redesigns and how they will be basically the rebirth, if you will, of the freedom fighters. Novel freedom fighters, that is. And some of you might say, well, what do you mean? Well, if I can find the title again, I'll explain. And basically, the title of the last video I did on this was the upcoming Countdown to Chaos arc will indeed be the capital, and I capitalized this word, the rebirth of the freedom fighters. Now, I did something else as well to kind of further explain what I'm talking about. And what I did was a wall of text, as some people would call it, a wall of text. In other words, I sat down last night ladies and gentlemen, and instead of using the Dragon Natural speaker, which I could have used that, folks. But instead, decided not to. Ladies and gentlemen, last night, I sat in the rec room, and even with the distraction of times of my 9-year-old nephew, and even my 5 to soon to be 6-year-old nephew, I sat down and I typed up a more further explanation of what I was talking about in that video. You see, I basically mentioned some of the similar things that I said in the video. I talked about how the third Genesis wave, if you want to look at it like that, would be similar to the Transmetal wave that occurred in the second season or so of Beast Wars Transformers. I explained how that was. I explained basically the fact that even though the redesigns occurred there, that they could have kept the characters in the original designs. Let me explain. Basically what I stated was, people may argue, well, Brian, the redesigns for the characters in Beast Wars in the second season and so were for the toy line of that year. Yeah, that is true. But, as I pointed out, I know some people would agree. And some people would agree. There are some toy line based cartoons, or there have been several toy line based cartoons that, even though the toys themselves have gotten makeovers and redesigns, the characters have remained the same. And basically, of course, I talked about the fact that I talked about the same thing here, and I put more emphasis on it. See, basically, I said at the beginning that that there's a certain portion of fans that are not too happy with the Saturday Young Cast redesigns. but there are also some that are cool with it, while others are happy to see the Saturday AM cast, like I mentioned, but are not happy with the redesigns. And then, of course, as I mentioned before, I'll mention it again, and I'm sure anybody else will point this out, there are some that are just not happy with the fact that the Saturday AM cast is coming back because they believe it'll steal the spotlight away from the game cast. Now, I do mention Other M because I mention Other M in here as well, because some people, when they first looked at these new redesigns, especially that of Antoine's recently, and then they take a look at that little box, that little picture box in the Super Special number 8. They look at that, and to them, something reminds them of Other M. Well, honestly, as I mentioned here, and I'll say it right here real quickly, I don't see that as of right now. But that I do understand that a certain fan base, a certain portion of the fan base does see it that way. But, as I say here, and I'll say it right now, we've got 5 more months left in this year, folks. Let's just wait and see what happens. But I do ask the question, why are fans so bugged by the possible, and I mean slimly possible, Other M influences and references that are coming in character design and redesign and have already been, in other words, have been seen already in the Silver Arc, aka Dark Mobius arc in Sonic Universe. Because as I point out here, and again I'll say here, as I point out in this text, and I will say here, there is no way, because I know a lot of people are worried about this, there's no way Ian Flynn's going to be able to get his Other M webcomic officially published. Because there's no way Archie at all, or even Sega, will allow such a violent story featuring those characters to be published. But besides that, I do want to know what is the problem with the references, if not the influence seen in the comic that possibly has come from Other M when it comes to the redesign and designs. Now I do mention this. I do mention that the redesigns could have been done differently and not have to be the result of a third Genesis wave or a DEM, Deus Ex Machina Hydra plant, if that will still be used. But thanks to backstage politics and stuff, courtroom proceedings and all that, those things, backstage politics and courtroom proceedings, they don't help. And then I get into the meat of this. Something that I've talked about before and I will talk about again. You see, the reason the Saturday AM cast is being, as far as the Saturday AM cast being back, and favorably, and yes I did say it, favorably, front and center, I know that there's going to be those that don't like the idea, but let me explain. You see, as I mentioned here, and I'll say now, so I typed up in this text and I will say now, the reason the Saturday AM cast is being featured front and center in their return, as they have been in the past at times, is because they have no limitations. They are unlimited. Unlike the game cast, to where they're very limited. Now you might say, well, what about the crossover? The crossover was because of Capcom wanted to do it. And because Capcom was involved, Sega had no problem with it. Because they needed something for the story. We're talking non-crossovers. We're talking regular based in continuity stories. And this is why they are primary, the Saturday AM cast is primarily the main co-stars of the comic along with Sonic, Tails, and Amy. Because they have no limitations to them. Heck, I even give an example I took from a friend because of their fan fiction stories. But as an example, Ikarum does these stories on the side. So I use what they do on the side as an example. For example, let's say Ian Flynn wanted to give Amy Rose elastic powers, wanted to make her an elastic Mobian that could change her shape, impersonate anybody, become anything, maybe even become some clothing. Ian Flynn, in continuity for the comic, for the main Sonic comic, if not universe itself, if not the universe spin-off itself, could not do that, even if it was for 6 months, because Sega would not allow it. So what would Archie do? Archie and Ian Flynn would basically say, okay, we can't do it to Amy Rose, let's do it to Bunny Rabbit. And they'd be able to do it to Bunny Rabbit for 6 months because she has no limitations. And that is why SatAM Cast is always featured in more situations and stories than the Gamecast, because they have no limitations, unlike the Gamecast. Now, of course, one thing that worries people is, will the Gamecast be shunned aside? Will they be shoved aside? Of course not. They will not be shoved aside. They're not going to be. I mean, if you want an example, ladies and gentlemen, if you want a true example, take a look at the upcoming post-crossover Sonic Universe song, Pirate Plunder Panic. It's going to feature 4 out of the 5 main female Sonic characters from the games. 4 of the 5 main Sonic female game characters. Blaze, Amy, Marina, Cream, you name it, they're going to be there. So don't worry, if you're a die-hard game fan, you don't have to worry because they will be there. And, just as I mentioned before, in the other video, I've mentioned here, and I'll say it again. And this is not just something of a statement, but it's a question. I mean, basically, the question is, what do you die-hard game fans want anyway? Do you want, honestly, an issue where it's basically one issue is like one zone / level in a Sonic game, and Sonic basically passes that zone or level, and that's it? And it's like, yay! Next issue, he's going into this level! Yay! No! That would be boring, wouldn't it? I think so. That is why the SatAM Cast is around. Not as much as they are. They give more life to what would just be, and I even called it this. It would be just a Sonic just past zone number whatever issue in the comic. Or comic period. So, again, you guys can look it up yourselves. I'll provide the link down below so you guys can check it out. But and there are various forums as well. The Sega forums, the Sonic Stadiums, the SatAM forums, SatAM Sonic Forum, Fans United for SatAM, SaturdayMorningSonic.com, DeviantArt, Fernvidian, ToonZone, the comic book culture section there. But basically, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm trying to point out here in more further explanation, you guys can read it as much as you want, give me your own comments, is basically, I'm basically trying to explain to you why the SatAM Cast redesigns or not, why they're being featured, why basically Countdown to Chaos is indeed the rebirth of the characters, and why they're in this situation. So, I thought I'd just explain that to you as quickly as I can while my mom was out with my 5 to almost 6-year-old nephew at Walmart right now taking care of stuff, and my 9-year-old nephew's now at a family birthday on his dad's side of the family for some kids. So I thought I'd just point that out to you, and that's all I'm going to say, and peace out, God bless. I'm going to see if I can try now to record Money in the Bank pay-per-view. If not, hey, at least I can still watch it and maybe download the torrent later. Peace out, God bless. Link will be provided down below. Take care.